Hi everybody, so welcome to part 2 of my youshoku cooking series. Today I'm going to be making omurice, which this was a bit easier to possibly find an origin story about it than it was for the pancakes, but I guess it's not exactly certain. There's several different restaurants after omurice started becoming popular. Several different restaurants claimed that they were the ones to originally make it, but the most popular ones that are considered to be the originators of omurice are Rengate in Tokyo and Hokkyokusei in Osaka. And so I believe the omurice started becoming popular after World War II, around the turn of the century, so in the 20th century, 1900s. And so what was interesting is in the article for the recipe on justonecookbook.com by Nami, she talks about how she was really surprised that a bunch of people were asking her for this recipe because she didn't really think it was that popular, and she was surprised how popular it was outside of Japan. And so I was just thinking that's really interesting because I think the first time I ever even heard of omurice was in anime, and I'm pretty sure that's like the main place that I've ever seen it is in anime. So I just think it's interesting how something like a TV show, like anime from Japan, gets spread around the world, and then stuff like the food that's inside the show starts getting spread around the world, and more people are curious about the food because they're watching an anime show. And so I think it's just interesting how culture, different parts of culture can spread around the world through different mediums. So these are the ingredients for the omurice. I am adjusting the recipe a bit for my family. Now, unlike the pancake recipe you probably want to get exact measurements just because things like pancakes are a bit more delicate, especially those pancakes. But for a recipe like this, honestly, the exact measurements aren't important. So like some of my measurements are a bit off from the original recipe, partly because I was changing it since I'm cooking for more people. But you don't really need to worry too much about the about the measurements. You just want to get in the ballpark of what it should be. So right here I have the ingredients for the filling. I have 3 boneless, skinless chicken breasts. The recipe says to use thighs. I'm just using chicken breasts because that's what we have. I have about 1.5 cups of uncooked rice. This is long grain rice. The recipe calls for short grain rice, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is no short grain rice available at my grocery store, so all I have is long grain rice. And then you can use just some mixed vegetables, like frozen mixed vegetables. I got this Asian mix at my grocery store that has soybeans, bell peppers, carrots, mushrooms, and then it also has some rice in it. You could also use like peas, carrots, and corn mix. I didn't really want that in my omelet, so I chose this mix instead because I thought it sounded better. And then I have an onion. I'm just going to use half of it. You can use more or less depending on your tastes. I have some vegetable oil for the skillet, a couple tablespoons. I have 3 teaspoons of soy sauce and 3 tablespoons of ketchup. So that is all for the filling, the rice filling of the omurice. And then here are the ingredients for the actual omelet. So I have 3 eggs here, a couple tablespoons of milk, about 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup of sharp cheddar cheese, and then some more olive oil for the pan. So the first step I'm going to do is start cooking the rice. So I will come back when I have that all set up. Okay, so the first step is cooking the rice. So I've got my rice cooker here. You also can cook it in a just a regular pot, but I have a rice cooker, so I'm going to use that. Also, for this rice cooker, it came with a measuring cup. I lost the measuring cup, but the thing about a rice cooker, at least this one, is that the measuring cup isn't actually 1 cup of rice, it's 3/4 cup of rice. So for the 2 line, I'm going to go to the 2 line on with water. I'm going to do 2 3/4 cup of rice, or 1.5 cups of rice. So I'm going to put in my 1.5 cups of rice, or 2 rice cooker cups. And then in there, you can't see it, but there are measurements, there are lines all the way up and down with numbers next to them. So I'm going to pour in water until it hits the number 2 line. Right there is fine. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this, plug it in, and then I'm just doing white rice. I don't have sushi rice or anything. So I turn it on, white rice, and then it will start just going. And while the rice is cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and start chopping my onion and chopping the chicken. Since the rice is gonna take a while, we can get the other parts of the filling done during that time. Alright, so the next step is going to be to chop the onion. There are lots of hacks about how to chop onions online. I don't really remember any of them exactly, so I'm just going to do my best to chop this. I'm only going to do half an onion, because that's what my family likes. So I'm going to put that to the side, and I'm going to peel off some of the outer edges before I start chopping. You just want to peel off the drier parts of the onion. And put those to the side because I'm not going to use them. And I'm going to start chopping. So you can make your pieces, I guess, however big or small that you want. My family prefers to have smaller pieces of onions, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to chop them pretty fine. So I'm just gonna start chopping these pieces a bit more so they're smaller. And your eyes will probably water. If you have contacts, they probably won't water as much, according to my mom anyways. Alright, so that's it for the onions, so I'm going to go ahead and put this into a bowl really quick. And make a mess of it. And then I'm going to put this to the side again. Alright, so now we're going to chop up the chicken. I'm just going to start with one piece. It's fine that there's still onion on the knife because it's all going to get mixed together anyways, so it's not really that big of a deal. And my chicken has partly defrosted. I just put it in the fridge the night before, but it's not fully defrosted. I prefer to cut with slightly frozen chicken. I think it's easier than cutting completely defrosted chicken, and of course you can't really cut completely frozen chicken either because it's too hard. But just partially frozen chicken I find is the easiest to cut, or any meat really. It doesn't have to be chicken. So I'm gonna go ahead and cube up all this chicken. I'll probably speed up this part just because it's gonna take a while. So I will see you guys soon. I'm gonna move some of this chicken back into the bowl that I was getting the chicken breast out of, just so it's out of the way. And then I'll finish chopping this last piece. Alright, so I've got all my chicken chopped, all the onions are chopped. So I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands, clean up this workspace, and get ready for sauteing the onions. Probably want to wait until maybe 15 minutes or so are left on the rice probably before I start cooking that, just so that I don't have the onions and chicken cooked too early before I'm going to add the rice. So I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to start out with cooking my onion. I'm going to probably go to a medium heat to start out. First I'm going to pour in this oil so the onion isn't sticking to the pan. I'll just spread it around a bit. Pour in the onion. And then I'm going to cook these until they start to become translucent and soft. So it's probably going to take a little while, so we'll just speed up this part. Alright, so my rice just finished in the background. I'm going to keep cooking these onions. Some of them are starting to get translucent. They're not quite yet where I want them, so I'm going to let them cook a bit longer. Alright, the onions are really starting to get translucent now. Some of them are starting to brown up. So now is probably a good time to go ahead and add in the chicken. And you just want to cook the chicken until it's no longer pink. So that'll take a few more minutes. Alright, so I'm going to add some salt and pepper just to season the chicken before it cooks completely. The recipe says to add it later. I'm going to add it now because I think it will flavor the chicken a bit better to add it before it's completely cooked through. And of course, just add seasoning to your taste. Gonna mix it up and then let it sit again for a little bit. Some of these pieces are a bit bigger than I want in my omelet, so I'm just using the spatula to break them up a bit. Now that they're mostly cooked, it's pretty easy to do. Alright, so it looks like the chicken's all cooked through. I've chopped up most of the pieces so they're a bit smaller. Just do a few more. But that looks good. So next, what we're going to do is add our vegetables. So I did forget to say this, but you want to make sure that if you're using frozen vegetables that you take them out at the beginning so that they've started to defrost by the time that you add them. You can probably add completely frozen vegetables to your mix, but it's going to take longer to cool. It will dramatically lower your temperature of your food. Even just these vegetables that have already been sitting out for a while have lowered the temperature of the food quite a bit. So it would be best if you took out your vegetables sooner and let them defrost a bit. So I'm going to let this sit for a few more minutes to come back up to temperature before I add the rice. Alright, so this is pretty much warmed up. So now it's time to start adding the rice. So I'm gonna go grab my rice really quick. Okay, the pot of rice is pretty hot, so I'm not gonna touch it directly with my hands. But all of this rice is going into here, so I'm not gonna worry about grabbing a different utensil. I'm just gonna use the spatula and put in small bits of rice at a time. Chop it up a bit. I accidentally turned off my burner, so let me turn that back on. Alright, so I'm just gonna mix in small bits of rice at a time like this. Grab some more. Break it up a bit, and then before I completely finish mixing this in, I'm going to add in my soy sauce and my ketchup. I'm going to use a spatula to help get it out. And I'm going to go ahead and mix it around again. I'm going to turn down my heat a little bit because the rice is starting to stick to the bottom of the pan. So you really want to make sure that you mix it all in and get the ketchup and soy sauce throughout the food, because you don't want to have one spot that just has a bunch of soy sauce and ketchup and then one spot that doesn't really have any flavor at all. And I think I am going to personally add a bit more ketchup and soy sauce. So, like I said, this isn't really a recipe where you need to worry about exact measurements. Just flavor it the way that you want it to be flavored. You can put in as little or as much of each ingredient as you want, really. And that looks pretty good. It's all mixed. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. I'm going to move this to the side and get it set up to start cooking. Actually, before I cook the omelets, I'm going to grab a couple plates first. So I'll see you in a minute when I'm ready for that. Okay, so I did buy a pan, a non-stick pan that was supposed to be compatible with induction, but for whatever reason it's not working with this cooktop. So I'm going to go ahead and use this stainless steel pan, and I have some oil in it. I'm just going to hope that the omelet does not stick. In the past, sometimes eggs will still stick even if you have oil, so I'm not sure what's going to happen, but we're going to go ahead and try this. Alright, so I have my oil heating. I'm going to try and cook this omelet. So there's a good amount of oil where if I pull the pan it will pool, but it doesn't appear as that it's pooling when the pan is flat. I don't want too much oil because then it will be as if my omelet is like swimming in oil, and that's not great. So I'm going to go ahead and try and cook this. Pour it in, move it around. And hopefully it doesn't stick to the pan. I got a non-stick pan. The non-stick pan does not work with my stovetop, even though it said it would, so we're using this instead. And I am not sure if I'll be able to get the egg to come off, but I guess we'll see. So we're waiting for this to set. It hasn't set completely yet, but still stay soft. It's almost ready. And then the recipe does say to put the filling onto the omelet and then flip it out of the pan. I'm not going to try to do that. In fact, I already did try. It did not work. So I just don't think I'm skilled enough yet with flipping food off of pans to do that. So instead I'm going to just try and flip the omelet off of the pan and see what happens. So I think it's set enough now. I'm gonna add my cheese. And it seems like it's moving a little bit, but it might still be stuck to the pan again. Just try and see if I can. All right. Okay, there we go. The omelet actually came off this time. Not perfectly, but I'm going to grab some paper towels. Alright, I'm gonna just try and shape this a bit more so it's into like kind of a football shape, I guess. Not exactly, but alright. So I try to shape it. You can see that this omelet is pretty brown. That's not really what you want. I think that might be because I had too much oil in the pan, but if I didn't have that much oil, my omelet would have stuck to my pan. So if you are going to make this meal, I really suggest that you make it on a non-stick pan, because otherwise you're probably going to have lots of trouble with your omelet sticking to the pan. You'll either have to cook it longer, which will make it brown before it will come off, or it will just stick completely. So this does not look as beautiful as omurice that you might see in anime, but I think it works. It still looks better than the other 3 tries that I did. It's actually in the shape. I got the filling covered for the most part. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grab the ketchup and finish this up. Okay, so sometimes in anime, you'll see them do like, I don't know, they'll write something fancy or whatever. I'm not going to try and do that. If you want to, you can try and go ahead and draw something or write something. I'm just gonna do a zigzag of ketchup like this. Okay, and then I'm going to taste it. See if I can get a piece of chicken. Oh dear. So yeah, I think that's really delicious actually. Of course you can change the flavor profile of the food by changing what vegetables you put in there, how much ketchup, how much soy sauce. I put quite a bit more ketchup than the recipe calls for, and I can definitely taste that. Maybe I would have put more soy sauce in, I think, because I don't think I can taste enough soy sauce, or just less ketchup so that the ketchup doesn't overpower the soy sauce. But yeah, I think it's really good. Just keep in mind, I'll put in some pictures of my first 3 tries because honestly they didn't look very good, and this is the best one, and it's still not perfect. So if you try and make this, don't be disappointed if it does not look great the first time you make it, because it's actually more difficult than you would think. You'll probably get much better results if you're using a non-stick pan, so I really recommend that you do that. But yeah, here's my omurice, and in the next video I'm going to be making chicken katsu. So I will see you guys then.